Yeah,
those
it
four
is.
people.
But it is vulgar that you take the people at the top and they are the ones who get the preference.
Yeah, and they got their interest too. So they got the money and the interest. It was I forget the amount. It might have been $50 or $60 million altogether. It was four people. You know.
You have had on, by the way, in case you just locked into us, that voice you're hearing on the other side is that of Afra Raymond. He is a Chartered Surveyor and Managing Director of Raymond and Pair Limited. Equally important is he's the man who has taken his own money and taken this thing before the courts. He's been trying to get the information from the 4I, or the Freedom of Information Act, so we can all see what is going on here. You have had ongoing discussions with the Minister of Finance. You call them constructive, and I don't expect you to give me all the details here, but what I am asking is how successful you feel from those negotiations. Will your request for the withdrawal of the appeal be on the one hand, and how soon you think we can see some resolution should that objection be be withdrawn?
Yeah, well, I find it interesting that you use the word constructive, and of course I did. When I used it, it was a Freudian slip. The whole construction thing.
Okay.
But yeah, the discussions have been the same, but have been constructive. I can't give too many details, obviously, because we're in discussion. The matter, I am optimistic. The matter is carded, is next carded for a hearing on the 14th of March, which is a Monday. So in fact, I have been preparing, because we're due to have some dialogue. I'm Minister Immert and myself. So he will have his team and I will have my team, and we'll have some meetings where we could try to discuss the details of the issue and so on. I don't know when that is going to be. We are hoping, and I'm just using a royal we are hoping that we could get something positive in terms of a sensible discussion that properly represents the public interest. I'm urging all of the right-thinking people in the political directorate, because it doesn't matter what beliefs people have politically. All political parties have right-thinking people who want to do the right thing within the party, and I'm urging them to give this a proper consideration. We cannot have concepts like recession and economic development and diversification and so on. And these are important concepts for the survival, for the country to survive and thrive.
Just to be clear,
we can't have those
concepts. Yes,
we can't have those concepts floating in the air in the political discourse, and at the same time be ignoring an issue of this size and this dimensions. In fact, we speak about diversification, and what is interesting, just a quip, Lawrence Dupree was certainly able to divert $25 billion of our country's money for his own benefit.
Yes.
Okay, and that was a loan, an interest-free loan made to the wealthiest man in the Caribbean. That's what it really represented.
Let's talk about the wealthiest man in the Caribbean, Afra, because he's talking in terms of, this is my company, I'm going to come back to get it. As you mentioned earlier, he still holds his shares. Yes. What is the situation? Is the Dupree situation a dream, or is it a nightmare waiting to be realized?
Well, I think that Dupree, from what I read, there was a major article on it in June of last year. From what I read, Lawrence Dupree certainly seems to be intent on reacquiring the company, reacquiring control of the company and some of its major assets. That was pretty clear. Some names were mentioned in terms of the lawyers advising him. I don't know if that's true and whether they've taken any legal steps. But they don't seem to me to have a good case, because we have a situation here where the fit and proper regulations govern. Those are regulations created by the central bank, and they govern the people who can do several things with finance companies. They govern who can have a controlling share of a finance company. They govern who can be a director or an officer. They govern who can be an auditor. They govern who can be an actuary. So they actually set criteria for the conduct and the history of those people. And if we look at those criteria, under those criteria, Dupree would not qualify.
Exactly.
To either own the company or be a director of CL Financial.
I am amazed that those shares, that his shares have not been seized, because when you have a situation like this that threaten the stability not only of Trinidad and Tobago, well, the rest other islands in the Caribbean. I mean, Barbados and Grenada suffered greatly from this and their depositors, but let's keep it at home here. Yeah. When you have a situation that threaten the stability and national security by natural extension of a country, and that person is still allowed to hold those shares, there is something disastrous. There's something just wrong with this.
Well, you see, I'll tell you something, yeah?
Illegal, too.
Well, yeah, it's a fundamentally wrong issue. And in one aspect of the thing legally, the shares are still his own, and the shares give one a certain amount of entitlement.
Mhm.
But that is not a blanket entitlement. That entitlement is subject to the strictures of the fit and proper regulations. The burning question is this: is there the political will? The question has been burning for some while in my writing. Is there the political will to enforce the fit and proper regulations? Because the proper enforcement of those regulations will actually have a rebounding effect in the society.
Yes,
CL
indeed.
Financial was so large and so powerful and had so many different divisions that a significant quantity of our high and mighty citizens were involved.
It is going to be
Okay.
very interesting because when you have a company that is too big to fail, firstly, you have to look at any repeat of that situation. You cannot have a company that's too big to fail because they, in fact, should be running the country.
Yeah, well, in fact, it's not only too big to fail, it's too big to go to jail.
Well, that is the part that we're hoping. That is the part we're hoping does not obtain.
Yeah.
But your point is well taken, because when you talk about so many tentacles coming out of this octopus, as it were, when you have so many people involved in it, you wonder, you're gonna you start sending people to jail. You're talking about, in some cases, the hierarchy of your financial standing.
Well, I mean, I want to say two things here, Rennie. I know we're coming down to the last little
Yes.
stanza of the show. I want to say two things in response to you. First of all, I want to be optimistic. And I want to say that, in fact, I have received support from significant groups in respect of my request for the appeal to be withdrawn
Good.
and for the information to be published. I would like to take the opportunity here to thank them for their support. Some other people have asked them for support and they haven't done it yet. So you know who you are. Get writing. But in fact, I want to thank, first of all, my colleagues at the Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute, which I'm an ordinary member of. And they have issued a clear statement in support of my call for the appeal to be withdrawn and for the information to be published in the public interest, in the interest of transparency and accountability. I was very pleased with that. Thank you, Transparency. I was also pleased with my colleagues at the Constitution Reform Forum, who have been grappling with some of the fundamental issues about how we reform our country's constitution and how we govern ourselves and how we live with each other. And they have also made a very clear statement in support of my campaign. So I want to thank the Constitutional Reform Forum for their statement. I would also like to thank the colleagues, the comrades from the trade union movement, the National Trade Union Center, NATOC. They have made a clear statement expressing their outrage that after all this time, there are no details being provided. And in fact, making the very sharp point in their release that in fact, the fact that the appeal appears to be continuing flies in the face of the campaign trail promises about accountability and transparency and good governance.
I appreciate your round of thanks,
Yes.
but you're not leaving unless I go back to something you just said.
Go on.
You spoke about, as we all know, it is not just the law, the laws are there.
Yes.
You spoke of the political will, and I did not seek to extract from you your conversations with the Honorable Minister. I will, however, do the talk show aspect of saying, have you seen from your discussions, not necessarily with him singularly, do you feel that political will to get this done?
Boy, this has been such a long, difficult, bruising.
The good thing is
fight.
that you're not a politician, so I'm waiting for a direct answer.
Yeah, well, in fact, I've seen some things that give me an optimistic feeling. But we must never forget that this is some of the biggest people in the land.
Yes.
Whose affairs would be exposed. I started off a little while ago, Rennie, to say to you that there was a scam at work here. And I'm putting the point, let's go back to the first layer of discussion, was the numbers. So we start off by telling you that, in fact, I'm going to sell you that car, and that car is going to cost $10,000. And you say, okay. And you're going to pay it off bit by bit. And I give you the keys. And you're paying $1,000 a month. And 11 months later, I'm still dogging you. And you paid 11,000 and 12,000. How could we accept that an estimate was given of $5 billion, and we have now spent $26 billion. Where did that money go?
Well, that's the important
Who
thing,
has that
because
money?
along
That
the
is
way,
our money.
from the Integrity Commission all the way down to the regulatory enforcers, we are looking at some serious problems that will come out of this information, because a lot of failure took place, and a lot of people must be held responsible, and the walls put up to avoid a repeat of this
Absolutely.
situation.
So the answer, Rennie, is that I feel optimistic. The discourse with Minister Imbert and one or two others has been a positive one. Until it's done, it's not done, because this is an immense struggle. As I've said to my friends and my supporters who have stayed with me through this time, I've said to them, and they've said to me, gosh, this is going on so long. And I've said to all of them, I've said, we all don't understand how huge this is, We are in fact, and mark these words, we are in fact in the opening chapter of an epic campaign.
Indeed.
We are in the opening chapter because, in fact, let's just put the most optimistic color on it. And let's suppose that in 2 months' time or 6 months' time, all of the information I've requested is published on a searchable database that we could all look it up and see who got what and so on. Let me tell you something. That information is going to give an insight into how things really run in this country.
That's right.
And that is actually going to spark off a whole fresh set of things.
A domino effect, without question, yes.
Okay? So you have business partners who are claiming they didn't have any money. Tom and Jerry were in business together. Tom was asking Jerry said, I don't have any money. And you found out Jerry got... It's like that, huh?
Yep.
Not to mention husband and wife and all kinds of other things. People who sat in cabinet with you, people who sat on boards with you, all kinds of things happen.
Good conversation for the Revenue Authority, trust me.
Oh, yeah. All kinds of stuff happen. So those are... I really want to thank the colleagues who have given this support. There have also been people who've been in the newspapers who've supported me. The Express gave me some support. I write for them on a Wednesday.
Yes, you do.
Mr. Peter O'Connor has been a constant supporter. He writes in the Newsday. He's been very good as well. And in fact, we need to keep on pressing that the right thing happens for the right reason.
Because of your insight, a lot of the small depositors will be asking the question, yes, I understand all you've said about the institutions. I understand all you said about the big people who will be brought in. I understand all that you're saying. What about my money is going to be a question from the small depositors. Speak to that, if you will.
Well, there's also a mysterious aspect, Rennie, because it's interesting. The point you're making is absolutely important. There's also a mysterious aspect in that some people were told you can get your money, but you can't get interest. Or you can get your money and you get part of the interest. And in fact, some other people, as we just discussed with the 4 directors, got all their money and all their interest.
And all the interest, yes.
And those are the kinds of differences that would emerge when we have all the details of all the payments. That is the only time you'll be able to have a proper conversation and say, well, hold on. You and I, Tom and Jerry, we were in business together. You put in 5 million, I put in 5 million. And I only got back 4 point something, and I was told to wait. And you got 5 million plus interest. What is this? So a lot of that has happened.
There is more mortar than there is pistol. Or is there more pistol than there is mortar? I think it should be
Sometimes
the
I
other way
wonder in
around.
Trinidad and Tobago. Now, I want to thank you for the opportunity to put these points, Rennie. It's really appreciated. I also know that the United Policyholders Group, which is a group that has been litigating this matter, it's a group of policyholders. I believe they're a South-based organization, and their attorney was Ramesh Lawrence Maraj. And I believe they have a matter before the Privy Council where the arguments have just concluded, and they are trying to secure a better financial settlement for themselves. Mr. Peter Permel is in an organization called the Clico Policyholders Group.
That's right.
And Mr. Permel and his colleagues were writing in the papers last week, I think, an open letter to Minister Imbert, seeking an early meeting with Minister Imbert to actually disclose how would they get the rest of their money. And what I want to say to both of those groups, I'm using the opportunity the last 2 minutes, Rennie. What I want to say to both of those groups is, I would never stand in the way of anybody standing and fighting for their rights. And as it is, the agreements that the government entered into created rights. I don't agree with those agreements. I said so from the beginning. I don't believe we should have ever entered those agreements. We did. They created those rights. I am saying that the existence of those rights, of those groups, the Policyholder Group and the United Policyholders Group and the Clico Policyholders Group, the creation of those rights that those people enjoy has created a corresponding bundle of rights which I intend to exercise.